Hi, everyone, and thanks for your interest in this very important and very complex issue of simple minds. We are all familiar with the fact that many animals are harmed and disregarded because they lack complex capacities for cognition, even if they may very well be sentient. And the question here is whether something along these lines could happen in the future with AI systems as well. If this happens, it could be especially bad for a number of factors. One of them is the scale. Maybe there could be many digital minds that would be simple. Maybe they would be neglected. They would be disregarded because they are simpler than human minds, as it happens with many animals. And maybe also they would be very vulnerable because they would lack the capacity to protect themselves that other more complex minds would have. Now, in order to see this, it's important to bear in mind that simplicity, when it comes to minds, can apply in different ways. So one of them is, cognition, rationality, how able a system is to follow a complex line of reasoning. But then another one is generality, and we can see this as it happens in the case of human beings. There are human beings with certain conditions that perform very poorly in many domains. And for instance, in social interactions, and they may do great in others, like maths. So in the case of AI systems, this could happen again. They could vary very, very significantly, much more than humans when it comes to their level of domain specificity. And even like, for instance, you could have AI systems with the same architecture that could be trained differently, and maybe their emergent functions could differ, but they could all have mental states that could be balanced. And then also, minds can vary with regards to their richness of their representations, of their experiences, the granularity of them, whether they are multimodal or not. And well, we can see this in the case of certain invertebrates again, like for instance, if you consider insects, they may lack complex capacities when it comes to cognition, maybe, but they can represent the world in very rich ways. Now, maybe something similar could happen with AI systems, but it may, and this may be more likely, it may be the case that even if they don't have such richness, nevertheless, they could have very simple experiences that nevertheless could be very intense and balanced. And then something that is very important to bear in mind here is that, LLMs should not be our only model when we think of digital minds. We shouldn't just think of frontier AI systems today. We may consider other ways in which digital minds could end up existing. One of them that is especially worrying has to do with the simulation of animal brains that is eventually successful could be conscious themselves as well. And we may be familiar with projects like OpenWorm that are open source to make things worse. And maybe nematodes are sentient, maybe they are not. But then this could also be expanded in the case of other animals. And in this paper, for instance, they estimate that at some point next decade, this could be done with mammal brains. Now, this is all very worrying, and this is something that is not just very speculative. It's also something that we could apply that has practical implications today. One way in which this happens is when it comes to framing the discourse about digital minds. There is a tendency of presenting it in such a way that we think of digital minds as human-like, or maybe super intelligence with regards to humans, not considering then simpler minds. And this may be problematic because then maybe if in the future these simpler minds exist, we may disregard them. And then we could also do something else, which is to pay much more attention to first order theories of consciousness when it comes to thinking about the ways in which an AI system could be conscious or sentient. This is something that we could consider. For instance, we designed benchmarks trying to elucidate this. And this also means that maybe the links and the needed engagement between animal advocacy and advocacy when it comes to AI welfare should be closer than we may think if we just consider digital minds as human-like. So that would be it. With this, I've just touched the surface of this topic, but I just hope that this can be useful to encourage further discussion. So thanks again.